Well, get ready for a pretty heavy dose of the pitchers here on this episode of Locked On Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. As always, I'm Braden Iwasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasco. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. As well, if you're new here, make sure you drop that subscription. If you're here on YouTube, if you're anywhere else, we really appreciate it. Also, if you haven't already, there's a little bell icon you can hit on YouTube, so you get notified anytime a video goes live or posted or whatever the case may be. A lot to get into today, Carter. We want to talk about Yariel Rodriguez, the amount of innings he's getting, just sort of a quick overview on him. And then Tommy Nance has been pretty excellent for the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll get right into him. Then we got the game, obviously, to get into. Plus, obviously, Gibby's back in Toronto. We got to take a look at him, sort of a look back over his career with the Toronto Blue Jays, giving you guys maybe set your sights on a different time of Toronto Blue Jays baseball and how much fun it was. Carter, let's start off with our boy Yariel Rodriguez.
Yeah, we'll jump right into our guy. Yariel, a little bit of an up and down season from the guy. Did not pitch at all in 2023, obviously, as you probably heard a lot of throughout this narrative this season. So just looking at Yariel, like I said, very inconsistent when you're looking at the Toronto Blue Jays, especially on this podcast, when we've looked at this team, we have really been harping on consistency, knowing what you're going to get day in, day out. Obviously, things happen. It's not going to go perfectly every single day. But with the way Yariel Rodriguez has been pitching, it hasn't been great. Over his season stats, again, first year in the MLB, 27-year-old, 4.42 ERA, 73.1 innings pitched, 75 strikeouts, a whip of 1.32. Really, Yariel Rodriguez, when you get straight to the point with this guy, it comes down to his command. His stuff is disgusting. He has very good stuff, plays a slider very well, and sits about 95 with the fastball. He does have the stuff to be a very good pitcher in the major leagues. But the problem is when you're either leaving pitches directly over the middle of the plate, or you're walking a whole lot of batters, or you're just having non-competitive pitches. It's right over the middle, or these pitches are missing by a significant margin. You don't have misses that are close to the strike zone, or just misses away from the middle of the plate. So these MLB talent level players are not mashing the baseball on you. This is something that is not going to be a recipe for success for a major league pitcher. So one thing looking at Yariel Rodriguez, just kind of to emulate this inconsistency. Again, ERA isn't necessarily everything, but I'm just going to go over his ERA throughout the months just to kind of emulate how inconsistent this has been. So in April, you got a 4.11 ERA. In June, you go up to, didn't pitch in May. In June, you go up to 15.43. Not going to play, obviously. 3.13 in July, August, a 5.84. Now September, here we are. Has one start, has been pretty good. In that start is with a 1.13. So he has had a lot of things to be positive about, but then there has been, again, a lot of things to be a little bit concerned about. And again, that all kind of stems from this command issue. But when we look at Yariel Rodriguez, I did say didn't play any baseball at all last season. So one thing that we can look at for, I guess you take away the September start. You look at recently, hasn't been the greatest pitcher, has had some inconsistent starts. You look at this guy's innings pitched, and you maybe think fatigue is starting to set in for a guy like Yariel Rodriguez, especially after having a full season of baseball off. So again, looking at Yariel Rodriguez, you go back to 2022, the last time he played a full season of baseball, only 54.2 innings. And then you look at 2021, 96.1 innings, working towards that, obviously, this season. And then in 2020, had 94.2 innings pitched. So the season isn't over. It still has a lot of time to go. So that is one thing that you can look at for cause of concern when you're looking at Yariel Rodriguez. However, when you look at Yariel Rodriguez, there has been a few interviews asking him how he's felt over his first MLB season. Obviously, a guy that doesn't speak the perfect English, so has had translations, and his translator, well, you know what I mean. Yariel Rodriguez obviously is saying this, but his translator is the one talking to the interviewers. Just I'll go over it quickly here. He says that he feels pretty good about his performance this year. He thinks he accomplished the plan that he had since the beginning. There's been a lot of ups and downs, of course. I learned a lot during the process, but at the same time, it's going to help me a lot to carry over for next year, to bring my confidence and to continue as a starter. So I've been talking a little bit, so I'm going to wrap it up with this. When you look at Yariel Rodriguez and you look at the way the Toronto Blue Jays season has went, this has been a pretty good, just kind of get it out of the way year, get your feet wet kind of year for Yariel Rodriguez. Not the most pressure of all time on him, especially with the Toronto Blue Jays not making the playoffs. So with him getting kind of his feet under him, get his feet wet in the MLB, throw us a few innings, can build on that for next season. And we've seen the flashes, and we talk about upside with a lot of these players on the Toronto Blue Jays. Yariel Rodriguez does have that upside. Obviously, like he said, there's a few things to work on, but I don't see any reason why this guy can't be an effective pitcher even for 2025, especially down the road. We have this guy for 4 more years. So it's something to be excited about when you're looking at this Toronto Blue Jays pitching staff.
Yeah, Carter, you went over a lot there, and I think the part that I want to take out of this is, again, he didn't pitch last year. He's not a major league pitcher, and he wasn't supposed to be this year. He was supposed to take the year in AAA and work through things. And, of course, the timeline got sped up with injuries, and he had to make his start. And I think, to be honest with you, so far, this is what I expected was going to happen with Yariel Rodriguez. I don't think this has shocked me in any way. I didn't expect him to come in and be this absolute all-star in year one. He's got to build upon it. And that's what he's going to do, I think, moving forward in the 5-year deal. Yariel Rodriguez will figure it out. But he needed that year of being able to work through things. And he hasn't really gotten that. I mean, yes, this year, but he almost needed the year in AAA, and he just didn't get it. So now he's had to build on things throughout his time in the MLB, which is a lot harder for a guy, a pitcher, to come in and go pretty much straight to the major leagues. It's just not something you see very often. And I mean, good for him being able to work sort of around it and I think find his game. Yes, it's not been perfect, but I think it's a great start to build on. And we'll only have to see more coming from Yariel Rodriguez. I think in the next few years, we'll really see what he's made of, right? I think next year, you look at it as a sort of a build upon year. And then year 3 is more of a refining year, right? He's got to refine everything down so that he's great for year 4 and 5. That was supposed to be the point of this deal, was that you have pitching when your top guys end up leaving or age out, like your Chris Bassitts, your Kevin Gausmans. Yariel Rodriguez was supposed to be the next wave. And I think this season we've started to see that he's headed in the right direction, at least, Carter.
Yeah, 100% is. You look at just the outlook for Yariel Rodriguez going into his first MLB season, and you're completely right. Wasn't even necessarily supposed to be with the team at all this season. And you look at even if you're worried about next season with the starting rotation, you have Chris Bassitt, Jose Barrios, and Kevin Gausman coming back. You'll have Alek Manoah at some point throughout the season, and you have a complete dog who's been pitching his butt off right now in Bowden Francis. So if you need Yariel Rodriguez to spot start for the start of the season, then you have Alek Manoah take over, and maybe these guys do some sort of rotation. Maybe there's some 6-man talks, depending on how one of these guys is pitching. Obviously, knock on wood, you got to worry about injuries and stuff like that as well. But again, when you got some depth for this major league team, it's nice to have a guy like Yariel Rodriguez at the helm. And you look at for the future. Some of these guys are getting older. They're on expiring contracts. You might have Yariel Rodriguez as one of your higher leverage pitchers in the top of your rotation going down the stretch. And also, we're talking about this fatigue stuff and looking at Yariel Rodriguez from the starting rotation this season. 2022, this guy was a reliever, wasn't even a starting pitcher. So that's why the 54 innings had a very impressive stat line, had about a sub-2 ERA. The whip was about a 1 as well, if I'm remembering correctly. Again, this is the Japan League, very different from the MLB League. So taking a full year off for what he's done this season, I think there's a lot to be positive about for Toronto Blue Jays fans. And again, it's just something this guy's got to build on. We've seen the stuff. We see how good and how high the ups can be. He's just got to find the way to maintain a middle ground here and just build on some stuff for 2025 in the last season of 2024.
Yeah, Carter, that's one of the things is I think you hit the nail on the head with, is that he was a reliever, right? The Blue Jays saw potential and saw what he could do and thought, okay, we can move him into a starting spot, a starting role here with this team moving forward. So, I mean, that's the question. We know, like, we've seen Yariel Rodriguez out of the bullpen, and he's looked good. It's just, what will his usage be next year? I don't think it's a doubt in anybody's mind that Yariel Rodriguez will be a piece of this, at least bullpen, moving forward. But it could very well be a starting spot, and we'll have to wait and see. We got a huge episode coming out tomorrow on the just the bullpen as a general, like who's going to be there for 2025, How many pieces are they going to have to bring in when we really take a deep dive into the bullpen? And Carter, I mean, we got a ton more to get into here. I don't want to
Yeah.
get caught up on
That'll
one or two guys, but I know you got a little bit more.
Yeah, just that's Friday's episode, just so you guys know. That'll be
Fridays, yeah, my bad.
full bullpen breakdown. But again, I'm not going to get into it too much as we're going to be talking about it Friday. But you have a bullpen that's struggling. You have starting pitching. If you want to address that in the offseason, you can throw Yariel Rodriguez in the bullpen to be a long man. And if for a bullpen that does not look very good, that could be a piece that can join Chad Green, Jordan Romano, likes like that, and bolster this bullpen a little bit. So again, free agency is going to be big for this team. It's going to maybe throw some roles up in the air for some of these guys that maybe haven't necessarily earned their spot for the 2025 team. But Yariel Rodriguez, this guy has options. He's, again, you would love to see him in the MLB team, but there is some flexibility here. There is no rush if he does have some fatigue and there is a little bit of soreness just from the amount of innings this guy is lugging. You do have some flexibility there. But for me, from a totality standpoint and looking at it from the whole big picture here, I definitely cannot complain about Yariel Rodriguez. But saying that, we've talked about one pitcher. There's a few other players that we want to talk about. I have one pitcher. I know there's one guy you want to talk about as well that's been struggling a little bit this season. So you're going to be quick to give him his flowers. A lot more we want to get into. We got a game. We got some player performances, some manager comparisons, obviously with John Gibbons coming back. So it's going to be a fun episode. A lot more to talk about. And we're going to take a short break here. Come back with a lot of a new Blue Jay stuff coming up.
Today's episode of Locked On Blue Jays brought to you by Game Time. You guys all know we talk about Game Time all the time. It is the one and only place I will buy my tickets. Game Time is a new feature. Game Time Picks. That makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Pick filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I'm telling you, this is the best part of this app because then I don't got to go searching. I hate searching through, trying to find the perfect ticket. I can just load it up. Game Time Picks is right there. It gives me a few options, and I'm good to go. They also have a bunch of other things like the all-in pricing. It's another great feature. So you don't have to be surprised at any other fees. You just know what you're going to pay. And Game Time will cover your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry as well. Game Time is great with their customer service. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Carter, my man, this is a guy that you have been dying to talk about. We sort of debated which episode should we do it on. Then, we sort of brought up the Yariel Rodriguez conversation. We're like, this is a perfect little episode to focus on some pitchers that maybe don't get either the recognition they deserve or they have some stuff that we want to comment on. It's time to talk about Tommy Nance, our guy, your guy. You've been loving him lately. Give us maybe a quick little breakdown on how he's been over the last few games.
Yeah, I've been wanting to talk about Tommy Nance, and it's not necessarily because I'm just the biggest Tommy Nance supporter of all time. It's because of just the significance that this guy can bring to a baseball team. So you look at Tommy Nance, you look at this guy over his career, has a career ERA of 5.06, 89 innings pitched, so not a lot. A whip of 1.36. His stats and stuff aren't necessarily popping off the page. Fastball sits around 94 on his career average. Has 4 pitches, sinker, curveball, slider, 4-seam, so pretty typical there. You look at his last season stats, not the greatest thing ever. You look at 2021, even worse. So, again, there's a bunch of things that you can look at Tommy Nance. Nothing is exceptional about Tommy Nance. But you look at how the Toronto Blue Jays acquired Tommy Nance, and it was from the San Diego Padres, a guy that just was traded for cash considerations. One of those DFAs that it was just like a nothing burger. You don't really blink an eye too much when you see Tommy Nance coming to the Toronto Blue Jays. But when you look at this guy's career and you look at kind of what he has done in his short tenure with the Toronto Blue Jays, so over his 15-game tenure this season, a 3.24 ERA, 16.2 innings pitched, 15 strikeouts, a 1.02 whip. Over the last 7 games, a 1.23 ERA with 7.1 innings pitched, 9 strikeouts, 3 walks, only 1 earned run given up, 0.82 whip. Pretty good stats. Pretty good for a guy that you're not going to have to pay a lot of money, don't necessarily have to throw in high leverage, and kind of just got randomly from a random trade from a DFA. And this is the point that I want to get into, is that for the Toronto Blue Jays next season, the bullpen is one of the biggest things they're going to have to address. you're going to have to find guys like Tommy Nance, the guys that are diamonds in the rough, the guys that aren't the big household names for your bullpen, the guys that can just kind of go out, you get them from a random place and they go and throw 95 and they can be productive for your baseball team. Whether it's a 3, 4, even a low 5 ERA in some instances for a low leverage reliever isn't the worst thing on your team. Again, you need those guys who can get big strikeouts in big situations, can get that crazy swing and miss stuff and that weak contact stuff. But again, everyone has a role on a baseball team. And what Tommy Nance has done with his short role with the Toronto Blue Jays has impressed me. And it's going to be something that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to have to monitor for guys in the future and for 2025 especially, but not even just for 2025 and beyond.
That's a great point, Carter, right? And that's exactly what sort of where my head's at with Tommy Nance is moving forward into 2025. You are not going to be able to go and spend just a ton of millions of dollars on a bunch of crazy good bullpen. These are how good MLB team bullpens are developed and made. They're guys from different situations that they spot something in and bring them in for quite cheap. And that's what the Toronto Blue Jays have to do. And maybe they found something here with Tommy Nance. I mean, over the last 7 games, you said he's got these great stats. He's looked really, really good. And I've had faith on him when they throw him out there. So moving forward in 2025, and we'll get more into this on Friday when we talk like bullpen roles and who goes where and what happens. But overall, Carter, the key is almost for bullpens every year is hoping that you strike gold, right? You dig and you dig and you dig and you just pray to God that it's gold. And you know what? Maybe the Toronto Blue Jays might just have to pray for that with, sort of the revitalization of Eric Swanson, which we'll get into, Jordan Romano coming back next season. This bullpen has the potential to be good. It's just those extra pieces that you build around those main guys because your main guys always aren't going to be there for you. So I think Tommy Nance is a perfect piece that just slides in. And if he could continue doing what he's been doing, I think he's going to have a pretty nice role with this Toronto Blue Jays team moving forward in 2025.
Bullpens are very frustrating to construct. Like you look at the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen last season, top 5 in a lot of stats. Like for example, Tim Meza, a guy that had a 1.5, 1.7 ERA. You look at him this year, got DFA'd by the Toronto Blue Jays, was playing in AAA for a while with the New York Yankees. Recently got pulled up. I haven't really checked in on Tim Meza because, again, a lot more things that I am more worried about than how Tim Meza is doing on the New York Yankees. But you look at Eric Swanson, you look at Jordan Romano, you look at guys that have been proven and have had years that have fallen off. Edwin Diaz is another guy who was this huge closer, still is a very good closer, but not necessarily putting out the numbers that you want to see. So on a year-to-year basis, some things can just go completely wrong. And you're going to have some adaptability when you're looking at these pitchers. And things went very wrong for this Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. When you're looking at it, there is some pieces that you can use for next season. Obviously, there's got to be a lot that you need to address in free agency. But again, you want a bullpen. Obviously, you would want guys like Emmanuel Clase, Johan Duran. You'd want your Devin Williams. But you can't have those guys all on the same baseball team. Like you said, you got to find your diamonds in the rough. Maybe some AAA guys need to step up. And that's why it's a team effort. One guy can't win a baseball game, especially coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah, Carter, and an interesting statistic that Tommy Nance brings to the table so far with this Blue Jays team is how good he's been with runners in scoring position. And I think as a reliever, that's a huge, huge tool to have. He's got a batting average against of .083. I don't know, Carter, when you bring a guy into a situation, that is what good relievers do. They get you out of jams in situations and pass the baton. And so far, Tommy Nance has looked great doing that. And if he can continue to keep that up, that sets him up for a perfect position. If, say, you get a guy like Chris Bassitt who goes out and sometimes he'll have those big innings where, he's got runners on the bases. He usually ends up getting out of them, surprisingly. But if you could bring in a guy like Tommy Nance, say on a little bit of a struggle from one of your starters there, just to even clean up the inning and get it out and, get the boys back in the dugout, that's a huge piece. So Tommy Nance could be a piece moving forward into 2025 that really, really does help and takes a little bit of stress off their starters, knowing a guy coming out of the bullpen can be there to clean up the mess when it does eventually happen.
That's the unfortunate part about pitching out of the bullpen is sometimes you don't just have to clean up your own mess. Sometimes you're cleaning up a mess that you didn't even create. So you definitely need those guys that can come in, not at the fresh start of an inning, not have their typical warm up pitches on the mound, to come out in the middle of an inning, have some adaptability and overcome some adversity. And come in 1-out situation, 2-out situations, whether there's runners in scoring position, whether there's bases loaded, whether there's just nobody on at all, and you come in with 1 out. So you got to have a guy that's flexible. Tommy Nance can be that guy. Great. Is Tommy Nance a guy that I'm necessarily going to be relying on next season? No. And that's the point of this conversation, is that you can find another Tommy Nance out there, and you might need more than one Tommy Nance. So the Toronto Blue Jays are going to have to look, whether it's in AAA, whether it's just guys that have DFA'd throughout the seasons. Look at Henny Cabrera last season, DFA'd to the St. Louis Cardinals, came to the Toronto Blue Jays and looked really good. So you can find some diamonds in the rough. Just going to be whether the Toronto Blue Jays have the ability to do that for the following season. So I guess we've been talking a lot about pitchers, a lot about individual players. Let's kind of get into the team sport of baseball and get into the Toronto Blue Jays game against the New York Mets. Way better game than the first game of the series. Just a complete team effort. Very good win by the Toronto Blue Jays, taking the second game of the series 6-2 against the New York Mets. Let's start at this. Let's start with Chris Bassitt. I'm going to throw it over to you to kind of give your first overall impressions.
Yeah, well, I talk about this guy being able to work out of situations, right? And Chris Bassitt just has been a dog as of late. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits given up, only 1 run. 8 strikeouts for Chris Bassitt is something that I absolutely love to see when he's been able to get the swing and miss. It is a beautiful thing to watch, and he did it today. Chris Bassitt, I mean, again, he's just the exact guy all the time. You know exactly what you're going to get. There's really not a ton of variance in his game.
No, he goes in and just gets the job done. The guy that probably is the most flexible out of anyone in your starting rotation. A guy that can probably go in the 6th inning if you really wanted him to and throw an effective baseball. Chris Bassitt looked really good tonight. At least one of those guys that doesn't start the season necessarily the hottest, doesn't necessarily have the velo. And Chris Bassitt's not a guy that usually ever has the velo. He's not going to be throwing 99 blazing corners out there, but he's going to give you 93, 94, and that's what he gave you in this game. Chris Bassitt almost gets better as the season goes on. That's just a veteran. You can tell that this guy has been in the league for a very long time, knows how to take care of his body, knows how to preserve the energy throughout the entire season. And when you're looking at when you'd rather have your players perform, would you rather have them perform in April and May, things like that? Would you rather have them start getting better in the months of September and October? Obviously, you should be on the latter end of the spectrum and go for playoff baseball in October. You want your best players to perform in the later months of the season. Chris Bassitt has figured out how to set himself up the best amount of success for that situation. But looking at Chris Bassitt for this game, the curveball and the cutter looked really good against left-handers, and I found that his 2-seam was, again, very good located against right-handers. You get that action coming in against these guys, provides weak contact, obviously getting some of those strikeouts. You got good command, painting corners. You don't need to throw 99. As long as you got a good command of fastball sitting in the low 90s, and you got some speed changes to throw off of that. Obviously, the curveball at some points is like 70 miles per hour. It's almost like an eephus pitch in some compared to some pitchers. But Chris Bassitt, just a guy that you love to see on your baseball team, and a guy, I always say this, I'll continue to say it about these veteran pitchers. Chris Bassitt's probably one of the guys that I'm the least worried about going into the 2025 season.
Yeah, Carter, I'm with you. I'm fully in on Chris Bassitt. I think that's the jersey that Justin Powers bought as well. So you love to see that for shout out JP. Great choice from him. A couple other guys I want to get into here, Carter, just from the game today. Shout out Joey Lopravito, 2 for 4 on the day. Ernie Clement, 2 for 4. Spencer Horwitz, 2 for 4. But Carter, there's one thing that I want to talk about, and I think you knew this was coming. The one thing I want to talk about. What a game! What a at bat! I'm gonna say, and I don't want to say what a game from David Schneider. What an at bat from David Schneider.
There we go.
The triple. I mean, that's the David Schneider. And I saw a comment, Carter, in one of our posts that we were talking about Davis, and sort of what you wanted to see. And I put him as the DH hitting lower in the lineup. Davis Schneider fits that when he is hitting like Davis Schneider does, excluding the last bunch of months, is the perfect DH. A guy that can hit for power, that can drive in runs, that isn't going to give you the best average, but is able to drive in runs. That's what you want out of a DH. And Davis Schneider does bring that when he's playing good baseball. Yes, 1 for 4 today with a triple, 2 RBIs. That is the Davis Schneider you need. And that's a Davis Schneider that I expect. I don't expect Davis Schneider to go out and hit 290. I expect Davis Schneider to go out there and hit 260 and drive in a couple runs on the one big at bat. And that's what I like to see. It was great. The boys showed him some love. They were dumping a bunch of water on whatever. And just so I have one thing here that he was talking to Hazel May in the post game there, Carter. I'm pretty sure you saw this as well. He was just talking about how much he loves playing in Toronto, and he made that pretty evidently clear. So shout out to Davis. I think he loves the city, loves his team, and I only pray that he continues to improve, get better, and sort of fix his game from the last couple months.
For sure. This guy's been a fan favorite on the Toronto Blue Jays for his entire career. Obviously, his career has not been that long, but you love a guy that the fans love, especially on our Toronto Blue Jays. But you said Davis Schneider is the ideal DH. I just want to revisit that. I definitely would not say that Davis Schneider is your ideal DH. Why not look at a DH? I want a guy like Kyle Schwarber. I want a guy like Brent Rooker. I want a guy maybe like JD Martinez, not this year, but like last year. I am selling out for hitting in the spot. Davis Schneider, pretty good fielder. Don't love him.
Yeah, sorry. I meant by that on the team that you have now, right? You're not your best defender, a guy that's can hit for power. And if you have the Davis Schneider from earlier this season, excluding what he's done now, but a guy that can go out and drive in runs, he might not hit for the best average, but can drive in runs. That's what you want from a DH. And if you can get the Davis Schneider from earlier this season, he's a pretty good DH for this team now.
Yeah, see, I'm not seeing it. I don't want Davis Schneider as my DH whatsoever. I rather have him in left field, a guy that isn't going to be it's not going to be the most flashy defense out there. He's going to make plays. I'm going complete sellout for power here. Davis Schneider for me, not giving enough power for my asset here. I want a guy I literally want Kyle Schwarber who's hitting 195.
Okay, but I'm talking about like team now. Who's on the team? Who are you putting as your DH? I think we went over it. I just can't remember who you had.
Right now, DH, there's not a good DH on this team. So, I mean, it's either, I guess, like, it could be anyone. You throw anyone in there. I don't think there's a great DH for the Toronto Blue Jays right now. And this goes into a conversation about if you don't make any changes on this team, you're not looking good for 2025.
No.
So, I don't think there's a DH on the Toronto Blue Jays, which is unfortunate to say. Maybe Dave or Spencer Horwitz, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
You could throw him there. That'd be my first one. Other than that, I don't got much for the DH of the Toronto Blue Jays. But Davis Schneider, that swing was awesome. Again, you wanna see more consistency from Davis Schneider. But I saw that swing, saw Davis Schneider driving 2 runs off the triple. Knew you were going to talk about Davis Schneider. So we've talked about how to fix Davis Schneider before. We've talked about how he has to hit the high fastball. Talked about how he can maybe get closer to the plate so he can have an easier time of getting access to that outside fastball. I'm going to take a different route at this, something that maybe Davis Schneider has not thought of while looking at his struggles over the past month. So I went to look at Davis Schneider. What does Davis Schneider do well? Davis Schneider hits inside, pitches well, but I didn't want to necessarily look at that. I wanted to see things that we have control of. It's like things like where he is in the lineup, maybe where which inning he comes into if there's a pinch hit opportunity. Maybe what the scoreboard looks like when Davis Schneider is coming up. So I got a few things here that could maybe fix Davis Schneider. So going into Davis Schneider here, he loves hitting with runners on first and third. It's the first thing I noticed. You look at Davis Schneider, 889 OPS in these situations and had an OBP of 400. So when he has hitting second in the lineup, so obviously the number 2 spot, 983 OPS, and in extra innings, he had a 1.133 OPS. So how do we recreate this for Davis Schneider? So Davis Schneider is a guy that does like to tweaks things when things aren't going exactly well. And obviously he has those glasses. So what we do with Davis Schneider is we draw ghost runners on his glasses. One on first for his right eye, one on third for his left eye. Davis Schneider, there's your fix. Runners on first and third. You get him in the corner of the glasses. It's the perfect opportunity. You got Davis Schneider just thinks now that there's runners on first and third.
You know what? Every time that you come to me and you say something ridiculous, he comes to me before the episode and he says, I got the fix for Davis Schneider. And I'm like, I just knew it was going to be something ridiculous. And sure enough, there it was.
See, there's a little bit more to this, because what if Davis Schneider comes up and there's already a runner on first? Maybe there's already a runner on third. How do we fix this? So it's like, when you go to the optometrist and like maybe not you because you can actually see, but for a guy that needs prescriptions, they usually go through it. They'll have like the little clicker and they'll go, what can you see better with? 1 or 2? Then you go to the next one, 3 or 4. So that's what we do with David Schneider. We got one where there's runner on first. We got one where there's runners on both, just in case there's no runners on. Then we got one flip where there's a runner on third base. So you got all assets covered, all of your corners covered. That's how you get David Schneider. And then what you also could do with the lineup, you could just lie to David Schneider, tell him that he's hitting in the second spot. Don't let him watch anyone hit. Just, you get him from maybe the clubhouse when it's David Schneider's turn, and then you just you fix the scoreboard. You say it's the 11th inning every single time David Schneider comes up, and then this guy is going to return to the Boston Red Sox series David Schneider that we once saw in his first series.
Jesus. All right, Carter, I'm ending the segment there. That was just ridiculous. We've got lots more to talk about. We got to talk about Gibby, his return to Toronto, sort of what he meant to this Blue Jays organization, a little bit more other things coming up. And then, we'll try to get out of here for this sort of strange Wednesday episode.
Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you can pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is very simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entries in as little as 60 seconds. So for this game, I'm going to ride the hot hand, and that means Vladimir Guerrero Jr., as you've heard of a lot on this podcast. Obviously, for the last game against the Mets, they got Sean Manaea. I think Vladdy has a good day. I got him over 1.5 bases. I got Spencer Horwitz, who has been raking as well recently. I got him also more than 1.5 bases, also took his fantasy points at 6.5. And I'm debating on taking David Schneider. Obviously, he has to play baseball, but it also depends if Rogers and the Toronto Blue Jays implement my changes for David Schneider and his approach at the plate. So I will take more than if they do that. If they don't, might be something to have to think about. But if you know which players are going to perform on specific nights, this is a no-brainer. Download Prize Picks and start making your picks today. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. Prize Picks. Run your game.
So, Carter, we talked about Gibby's return to Toronto. This is my thing, okay? I'm just going to throw that out there. Have we looked at John Gibbons' time with the Toronto Blue Jays with a little bit of rose-colored glasses? I'm going to put that up before I tell you any Johnny Gibbs stats. Do you think that we've maybe been looking at him with a little bit of rose-colored glasses?
Probably. I mean, John Gibbons is one of the guys that I remember the most fondly of about the Toronto Blue Jays and their history. Just seeing him get fired up, getting kicked out when I was younger, just was always exciting. But looking back, thinking about those teams throughout the 2010s, obviously up until you get closer towards the 2020s, I think Charlie Montoyo, if I'm correct, took over 2017. Again, I'm bad with the years, but I was around there. You look at John Gibbons. One of those guys that probably didn't have the best win-to-loss record, but was a fun guy to watch. So maybe there was a little bit of Toronto Blue Jays bias in our eyesight right now.
You know what? I love them too, and if they're the rose-colored glasses, you can tell me that. But I don't know. It was the most, like you said, the most fun Toronto Blue Jays baseball that me or you have ever gotten to see was with Gibby on the bench. So I'm just going to go over some of his stats here, and one that might shock you. So in 11 years. Gibby's win-to-loss ratio was almost exactly 500, 501. He had 793 wins, 789 losses. And Carter, this is the statistic that stood out to me, okay? John Gibbons was ejected 53 times in his 11-year tenure with the Blue Jays. That's almost 5 times a year that he was tossed. In 2005, he was tossed 8 times. In 2016, he was tossed 8 times. In 2017, 5 times. In 2018, he was ejected 7 times, Carter. That is an immaculate amount of games to be ejected for. But he was just the best. When he got in the ump's face and just started going off, I was scared through my TV because I thought his face was just going to like one of those 3D movies come out at me. And I just couldn't imagine being up and facing Gibby like that. Holy moly, what a guy!
he's an entertainer. He's just one of the best to ever do it from an entertainment standpoint. So fun to watch him just fire up the dugout. Just going back to those times, you got guys like Josh Donaldson, you got guys like Brett Lowry, then you got Gibbons just holding down the back end. That's you'll love to see it. Just the guys that bring you back to one of my favorite eras of Toronto Blue Jays baseball. Obviously, yeah, you'll look back at it. Maybe you'll look at the stats. Some things are meant for stats. Some things not meant for stats. Gibbons is not meant for the stats. He's meant for the good memories. But maybe it was something that John Schneider can learn from. Maybe a way to inspire some, ignite some momentum and electricity into the Toronto Blue Jays lineup. Maybe when things aren't necessarily going too well.
Yeah, and you hope so, right? You hope so, because man, this Toronto Blue Jays team could use a little bit of fire. I think if they come out storming, and I think that this is the mindset the Blue Jays are in now, is I think that they're pretty determined going into 2025, and I think that's one thing I've seen from them is really the passion for the game, and I think through the comments, through the play from their superstars, sort of in the back half of this year, they've realized what has happened, and then the consequences that come from playing not good baseball. And I honest to God don't believe that will happen in 2025 because I just don't think they'll let it happen. It'll be interesting, Carter, to say the least. I do want to give a fantasy update as I am in the finals for the my or whatever sort of abandoned MLB fantasy league. I'm currently down 12 points. It's not looking 100% great. Teoscar Hernandez is out with a day-to-day injury, and he's in my lineup, so not good there. But Jose Barrios hopefully will get me a couple points coming up later this week. And then, Carter, obviously, tomorrow we have Bowden Francis versus Sean Manaea. Excited to see what Bowden can do sort of with an afternoon baseball game and how he can compete and what he'll be able to put up. The stats are pretty even with him and Sean Manaea, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Fantasy football is back as well, Carter. You did beat me, so shout out to you. I know we talked about a little bit about that yesterday. It does help me for the waiver wire. I think I'm in like almost dead last, so I'll get some good guys off the waiver wire for week 1. You love that.
Yeah, it's interesting with fantasy football. One league I'm trying Fab, which just means that it doesn't come down to your win loss record. Just you can all it's like an auction almost. You just all bet on a player, and it just makes it more equal, especially at the start of the season, because it's almost like a cheat code to lose the first couple weeks in fantasy football if you don't have it this way and it's by priority. And you just get all the good fantasy players at the start of the season. Some of them work out really well. Again, if you guys are NFL fans and you follow it even slightly, you'll know who Puka Nacua and probably Kyron Williams are. Both guys that were found often on the waiver wire last season who led to some league winning teams. Definitely not in Braden's case. But Braden does know a thing or two about getting second place in fantasy. So the stars aren't necessarily aligning for him here. One more thing I wanted to add about Gibbons is just what a route this guy's taken. Toronto Blue Jays then had his own podcast for a little bit, just was chilling, just doing his own thing, and then comes back to the MLB with the New York Mets out of all teams. So as a bench coach. So interesting to see when he was making a call. I think it was on a Vladdy. Well, should have been double. I guess he did pop off the base. Again, that's something we can talk about, but didn't end up mattering too much for the game. Was close play, but anyway, just seeing Gibbons make that call just didn't necessarily feel right in the stomach for me. Definitely got some nostalgic feelings, but that's pretty much all I got. Other than I just wanted to thank you guys for the likes, comments, subscriptions, all the support recently. Even with the Toronto Blue Jays not making the playoffs this season, we are on the road to 2025, unfortunately. So we appreciate you guys sticking along the way, but we have noticed that about 68% of you guys are not subscribed. So if you guys are coming back, watching all the podcasts and tuning in, it helps us out a ton. It also keeps our podcast at the top of your page. We got third game against the Mets. Obviously, the Bowden Francis game. Hopefully can continue on his success as of late. Might be a guy that we don't have to rely on, but we want to rely on going into 2025. Braden, you got anything else to add before we shut it down for another day?
No, not really. I'm just I'm just cruising. I can't wait for 2025. I want to see what the offseason brings. So that's where my head's at. Football, kicks off. Hockey's getting going soon. So a lot of sports to watch. But the MLB is still in full effect. So make sure you guys go check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Sully, our guy, he's going to be covering all the big storylines going into the postseason. So make sure you guys have a good night. We're going to try it the same, get this up for you guys, and then we'll be good to go.
I got one more thing to add here, but feel free to send the clip of me explaining how to fix David Schneider to the Toronto Blue Jays, whether it's John Schneider personally, whether it's front office, whatever you need. Obviously, that is a clear fix to David Schneider. It would make my friend Braden feel a lot better if David Schneider figured out how to hit a baseball once again. So I would appreciate it just to get the credit for that, and Braden would appreciate it to see his favorite player rake baseballs once again. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.